When Gal Gadot, a Hollywood A-lister known for her role as Wonder Woman, enters the scene, it's usually for a blockbuster or an inspiring speech about empowerment. With effortless elegance and just the right dose of contempt, dismantled two of the most insufferable women in modern pop culture. Meghan Markle, Duchess of Delusion, and Rachel Zegler, the poster girl for career-killing hubris. Gadot's brutal remarks, cutting, concise, and devastating, mocked Meghan's vanity disaster as ever and ridiculed Zegler's feminist Frankenstein of Snow White. The reaction, applause from industry veterans, snickers from audiences, and one inescapable truth. The two woke darlings have finally been exposed. This wasn't idle gossip. This was cold, factual humiliation delivered by an A-lister who's earned her place in the industry, not through victim narratives or weaponized interviews, but through real talent and public grace. Gadot, who played the evil queen in the doomed Snow White reboot, didn't just roll her eyes at Meghan and Rachel. She buried them under the weight of their own ego-driven failures. Let's start with Meghan Markle, a woman who has somehow become both omnipresent and utterly irrelevant. Her as-ever brand, pitched with all the earnestness of a 2014 Pinterest board, was meant to be her Gwyneth Paltrow meets Oprah moment. Instead, it became a flaming wreck of hypocrisy and smugness. Overpriced jam? Meaningless lifestyle slogans? Fabric samples? This wasn't luxury, it was delusion. And even worse, it was built entirely on a lie. The idea that Meghan, who fled royal life complaining of privacy invasions, somehow deserves to monetize her victimhood with curated authenticity. But Gal Gadot, with the brutal efficiency of someone who doesn't tolerate nonsense, nailed it. During a closed-door Hollywood roundtable, she allegedly quipped, "Is it as ever or as never? I can't tell if it's a brand or a cry for help." That one line detonated across industry circles like a social landmine. Why? Because everyone was already thinking it. Meghan's brand is so divorced from reality that even her own Hollywood peers have stopped pretending to care. The numbers tell the rest of the story. As Ever was launched with choreographed fluff, a black and white aesthetic, syrupy voiceovers, and Meghan's ever-pained facial expressions. But consumers weren't buying it literally. Sales figures were laughable. Engagement plummeted. Critics and influencers tore the project apart for its lack of identity, substance, or any redeeming purpose. As Ever is now unofficially dead in the water, existing only as another bullet point in Meghan Markle's long resume of failures. But just when you thought the cringe couldn't get worse, Rachel Zegler entered stage left with Snow White, a disaster so culturally tone-deaf, even Disney execs started sweating before its release. Zegler, who was cast in the titular role of one of the most beloved fairy tale characters of all time, spent her press tour tearing the character apart. Snow White would no longer be kind, gentle, or hopeful. She'd be strong, independent, and disgusted by men. Zegler even bragged that the prince was creepy and that this remake would teach young girls not to dream about love. What she created instead was the most joyless, soulless princess in cinematic history. And Gal Gadot, ironically playing the evil queen opposite Zegler's angry feminist snowflake, watched the train wreck unfold from the inside. It's no surprise she quietly distanced herself from the film and, in a rare moment of truth, reportedly joked, "At this point, I think the mirror should just break itself." Brutal, yes, but accurate. The film's test screenings were catastrophic. Audience reactions were hostile. Disney stockholders panicked. Snow White had become a symbol not of empowerment but of ideological overreach and creative suicide. Zegler, much like Meghan, didn't learn. She doubled down. She tweeted snarky comebacks, leaned further into her victim persona, and alienated the very Disney fanbase that made her famous. Gadot didn't need to say much more. Her silence, her dry sarcasm, and her complete absence from promotional efforts said it all. This wasn't art. This was a self-inflicted implosion. Here's the unfiltered reality. Meghan Markle and Rachel Zegler are not victims. They are architects of their own decline. Both were handed golden opportunities, Meghan with her global platform and royal connection, Zegler with a lead role in a Disney classic, and both squandered them with insufferable arrogance. Instead of gratitude, they offered lectures. Instead of grace, they weaponized identity politics. And instead of delivering excellence, they peddled mediocrity dressed up in buzzwords like empowerment and authenticity. What they failed to realize is this: the public isn't stupid. Audiences know the difference between a role model and a narcissist. They know the difference between artistry and activism masquerading as entertainment. Meghan Markle's As Ever is a marketing corpse, a brand with no heart. Rachel Zegler's Snow White is a cinematic warning. Insult your source material, mock your fans, and you will be remembered not as a trailblazer, but as a punchline. Gal Gadot's remarks cut deep not because they were mean, but because they were true. She didn't need a scandal, a Netflix deal, or a tearful Oprah interview to remain relevant. She stayed grounded, focused on her craft, and allowed the work to speak. And when the time came to call out nonsense, she did it with a surgical strike that humiliated Markle and Zegler without ever breaking a sweat. In the final analysis, As Ever is dead. Snow White is a farce. And the two woke disaster queens now stand as cautionary tales for every fame-chasing opportunist who thinks ideology can replace talent. Meghan Markle and Rachel Zegler overplayed their hand. Gal Gadot just showed the world what happens when someone who actually commands respect decides to call it out. They weren't just mocked. They were exposed. For Gadot, who has built her career on strength, independence, and genuine empowerment, the mockery of As Ever and Snow White was more than just a comedic moment. It was a reality check for the entertainment industry. The world is tired of being force-fed politically correct narratives and woke reboots. What people want are stories and brands that feel real, something that Meghan Markle and Rachel Zegler seem to be sorely lacking. In a culture that celebrates authenticity, these two woke disasters are nothing more than empty vessels, unable to capture the hearts of audiences who crave something more. And as Gadot so brilliantly pointed out, it's only a matter of time before the public catches on and leaves them both in the dust.